Assist, plus active military, veterans, first responders, and their families get $1,000 more in appreciation cash.
Tonight, breaking news, disaster in Texas, the relentless rain, the flooding catastrophe here in Houston, the death toll climbing, the around-the-clock rescue effort by boat and by air.
Please help us. I'm scared.
Families on rooftops pleading for help. Emergency crews and volunteers carrying thousands of victims to safety. And the pregnant mother going into labor, the baby that just wouldn't wait. President Trump flying into the storm zone tomorrow. The new race against time. Dams pushed to the limit. Water released to prevent them from overflowing, putting even more homes at risk. Shelters filling up by the thousands. Families with nowhere else to go. And also breaking tonight, the new report as we come on the air. North Korea firing a missile over Japan.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir. Tonight, special coverage of the disaster in Texas.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of World News Tonight this Monday. I'm Tom Llamas, in for David. And tonight, Greater Houston remains paralyzed. A region of 6.8 million people advised to shelter in place and stay off the roads as the flooding disaster unfolds. The storm claiming even more lives. And just behind me, you can see downtown Houston and where the Buffalo Bayou meets downtown. But there is so much water here, you can't tell where downtown ends and the bayou starts. And with all the help coming in from the federal and state governments and from California to Rhode Island, it's still not enough. Neighbors and strangers pitching in for a third brutal day, torrential rain. People rescued from their flooded homes by official teams. And you see it right there by an armada of volunteers with boats. Tens of thousands of people now under mandatory evacuations. The rivers still rising, and this dangerous development, 2 reservoirs threatening to spill. Tonight there have been more than 4,000 high water rescues. More than 30,000 people are now expected in shelters, and 12,000 Texas National Guard members have been called up. That's every service member who is available to serve. And tonight the storm is growing stronger again, threatening Louisiana as well, and it could be days before the sun shines here again.
Tonight, new evacuations and fears the death toll will rise across America's 4th largest city.
There is a reality that we have to come to grips with, and that is we are just beginning the process of responding to this storm.
What started with a direct impact on the tiny coastal town of Rockport on Friday night has turned into a weather disaster affecting thousands of square miles and millions of people. More than 39 inches of rain already in spots and more on the way. Officials releasing millions of gallons from the Addicks and Barker reservoirs, hoping to prevent a catastrophic dam failure. But the water inundating neighborhoods, forcing thousands of residents from their homes.
We had to leave some people behind, which is really, really tough in these situations. They can't sit in these homes anymore with this water rising.
Thousands rescued by boat, more than 300 by helicopter.
This is the water.
Aisha Nelson stranded with her children on her roof.
It's water everywhere. We have nowhere to go. And I have all my children. I lost everything. I have nothing but clothes on my back. Please help us. I'm scared.
Hours later, finally rescued.
To give you an idea of how paralyzed Houston is right now, take a look at this. The public transportation system frozen. This is a line of city buses. It stretches as far as the eye can see behind me and all the way in front of us.
The Texas governor now activating all 12,000 members of the National Guard. Emergency responder frequencies overwhelmed.
There are 2 adolescent boys in kayaks that are missing that cannot swim, along with a family of 3 that's stuck in high water.
Houston's own citizens are stepping in to help save each other.
You help us out here. We're just going to go under this overpass and around the corner.
Along the highway, we met a driver who took us to a flooded-out neighborhood where a woman was stuck in her home. The ceiling starting to buckle. Her family asking for help on social media.
Did you see a house with the roof collapse?
We find the home and the part of the roof starting to cave in. The woman, Sonara Reason, displaced by Hurricane Katrina, now dealing with Harvey.
I don't know. I've been through so much, so I really don't know. I mean, I'm a war veteran, so this is a bad joke for me right now.
But she refuses to go to the shelter. She doesn't want to leave her pets behind. In another part of Houston, the Bel Air section, two brothers are working around the clock to save their neighbors.
You can't see if it's a foot or 10 feet.
We told them about a woman we heard was trapped. They jumped into action, taking us right to the home.
Yvette!
Inside, there was water everywhere.
This is your home?
Yeah, it's our home. And these are our neighbors, Yvette and James, and one of our boys is here, and I'm going to start crying and be like an idiot.
It's painful. They now have to abandon a home they've lived in for 25 years with only what they can carry.
We feel still very fortunate. We're happy for your help. We're happy to get out, though.
And Sierra Lee thanking first responders who helped her get to the hospital while she was in labor, writing, Landon Jared was born perfectly healthy at 3:30 p.m. on August 27th.
And that mother telling us she never got the name of the people who saved her, but she will always be eternally grateful to them. As you can see and sometimes hear, the record rain in this region has put reservoirs and dams under tremendous strain. Engineers have begun to release some of the pent-up water, hoping to keep it under control. But tens of thousands of homes are now under threat because of it. Here's ABC's Clayton Sandell.
Houston's Fleetwood neighborhood tonight is a marina.
Hello!
Dozens of volunteers like Kenny Evans showing up with their own rescue boats.
Everybody all right? Have you ever seen anything like this? Never, no.
People here say they were caught off guard by rising floods overnight, supercharged when officials say they were forced to release water from the nearby Addicks and Barker reservoirs. The Lipke family, 3-year-old Jude and 2-year-old Oli,
Here, you guys sit right here together, okay?
stranded with mom and dad for 13 hours.
Kind of fun?
You were excited for a boat ride.
The Army Corps of Engineers is sending water downstream to relieve pressure on the dams, but they're filling faster than they can be emptied, meaning homes on the backside of the reservoirs are flooding too. Nearly 3 dozen subdivisions, hundreds of homes at risk. Evans estimates he's carried more than 100 people to safety.
911 won't help you. I'm here to help you. Officials say they may have to keep draining the reservoirs for as long as 3 months. Now, the dams are 70 years old. They are in need of a fix, but tonight officials say they are expected to hold. Tom?
But all those families still caught in the middle, and it's unclear when or if they'll be able to go home. Clayton, thank you. As we just saw in that report, people need shelter right now. Around 30,000 of them across this area, and some will be in need for a long, long time. The city's shelters are rapidly filling up. ABC's Victor Oquendo is at the Houston Convention Center, which some 5,000 people now call home.
They were brought here in dump trucks, lifted out one by one, but by afternoon, they were coming in by the busload.
Take a look right outside the convention center. Bus after bus dropping off more evacuees.
Some arriving here without even shoes on their feet, long tables of volunteers handing out clothes. Asma Flowers arrived with her 3 kids, volunteers wrapping them in towels. She tells me it took her 3 hours to get here by boat, by foot, and finally by bus.
As long as my baby's safe, I'm okay.
The Red Cross prepared cots for 5,000 people. Most are now taken. The shelter nearing capacity.
This shelter mission is going to be a very heavy lift. We're anticipating over 30,000 people being placed in shelters temporarily.
Smaller shelters also filling up. In nearby Dickinson, rescue workers carry an elderly woman in a blanket into City Hall. The corridors crowded with children, shivering and frightened.
These kids need help.
I mean, they're soaked to the bone.
They're completely soaked.
With government stretched to the limit, churches pitched in. Pastor David McDougall welcomed nearly 300 people to the First Baptist Church in North Houston.
They're sleeping on the ground and chairs, and people sleeping under tables. And we're trying really hard to keep everyone safe.
His wife Serena pleading on Facebook, out of food and water for these 200 plus people, anything good would help.
And so many powerful stories from inside that convention center. That's where Victor Oquendo now joins us live. And Victor, there's an urgent need for shelter, but it will soon become an all-out effort to find homes for so many of those people.
Tom, the people we spoke to hope to return home, but FEMA's Administrator Brock Long saying, quote, housing in Texas will be very frustrating. The last resort would be manufactured homes or travel trailers, and that would be a process. Tom?
Still many months away. All right, Victor, thanks so much. The flooding emergency here in Houston is triggering a dangerous health situation as well. One hospital is under evacuation, others strained to the limit. People with chronic illnesses are in special need. Add to that the lack of electricity, clean water, medicines, and stress. And this area could soon be experiencing a full-blown medical crisis. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
Some of the most vulnerable families today begging for help.
We cannot get out.
Bernadette Cullen-Pagan trapped inside her home with 6 children and a husband who is diabetic.
He has to eat a certain type of food at a certain time. We try to get through 911 and 311. All those are so busy to get through.
It is completely underwater.
At Houston's Ben Taub Hospital, they'll try evacuating the most critical patients tonight. Meanwhile, at area nursing homes, rescues underway. The patients from this home in Dickinson, Texas, saved after this heartbreaking photo was posted on Twitter. The water rising around their chairs.
The people that came in that have dementia and had been in a nursing home, they were scared, they were cold.
Tonight, dramatically different. Those patients safe and sound. As for rescuers, another possible hidden danger. Questions about what's seeping into the water on top of the wildlife. Mounds of fire ants, snakes, even alligators. The rescuers pitching in to save many just desperate to get out. Tonight, Bernadette sending us this video moments ago showing her family rescued, thankful to make it out of their home.
And Eva, such good news for that one family, but what does this mean for all those other families who have medical emergency?
Well, Tom, it's just really hard to get around right now. As I'm sure you see, there's water everywhere. A lot of roads are closed. Getting to an open hospital or an emergency responder getting to you is just going to take time. Tom?
It is one of the reasons that these rescues are so complicated. All right, Eva, thank you. I want to go now to ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano. He's tracking this monster storm. Rob, you were out there with the first responders all day. Give us the big picture now. Where is this storm and what lies ahead?
Well, it's just off the coast and actually reorganizing, and that's why we've seen this rain begin to come down a little bit harder today. We're in Fort Bend, Texas, where these roads have become boat ramps for volunteers and first responders trying to get people out of their homes as the water continues to rise. We saw people coming out with children on their arms. We went out with the sheriff to rescue other people and their pets, and sisters that thought they could ride out the storm, but the waters came up too quickly and they continue to rise right now. The storm right now is off the coast and it is forecast to continue to swirl its way into Louisiana. Another night of heavy rain here in Houston, and then sliding east tomorrow, and that's when the heaviest rain should be over, at least for the Houston area, but another 10 inches potentially in some spots. Tom?
All right, I don't know how the city can withstand any more torrential downpours. Rob, thank you. Next tonight, President Trump heading here to the disaster zone tomorrow. The president today speaking for the first time about the devastation in Texas, praising first responders and the rescue effort. President Trump's handling of his first natural disaster under intense scrutiny tonight. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
At the White House today, President Trump offered this message to the victims of Hurricane Harvey. We are 100% with you.
We are one American family. We hurt together. We struggle together. And believe me, we endure together. We are one family.
The president was upbeat about recovery efforts, saying the Texas governor is doing a fantastic job, calling his FEMA administrator outstanding in so many ways, and predicting a swift recovery.
Yes, Texas is a unique place. It's a great, great state, great people, and I think you'll be up and running very, very quickly, really very quickly. So, yeah, I think you're going to be in fantastic shape.
Trump today also defended his controversial pardon of Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who was convicted of contempt of court for racial profiling. The pardon was announced just as Hurricane Harvey started to hit the Texas coast.
In the middle of a hurricane, even though it was a Friday evening, I assumed the ratings would be far higher than they would be normally. You know, the hurricane was just starting. And I put it out that I had pardoned, as we say, Sheriff Joe. He is loved in Arizona. I thought he was treated unbelievably unfairly.
And John Karl joins us now from the White House. And John, President Trump is heading down to Texas first thing in the morning.
The president and the first lady are going down to Texas to get a first-hand look at recovery efforts. And Tom, they tell us that the president will be going back to Texas and to Louisiana on Saturday.
Now expanding that trip. All right, Jonathan Karl for us at the White House. Another big story we're following tonight, the latest provocation from North Korea. Reports of a new ballistic missile launch, this one passing over Japanese airspace. ABC's chief international correspondent, Terry Moran, joins me now from London. And Terry, what do you know about this missile and the response in the region?
Well, Tom, this is another serious escalation. North Korea firing a missile crossing over Japanese